Hey folks! Alright, I'm finally back. I've been deep in the editing mines, and so I took a few months off of making videos so that I could focus on editing my novel, but now I'm back to tell you all how it's been going. First, I finished writing my first draft, got all the words out, got it how I wanted to. So once I finished writing it, I took a few weeks off just to kind of separate myself from it, come back to it with fresh eyes. So then to start off, I went through the entire manuscript and just made notes about the changes I wanted to make. And then after that, I went chapter by chapter to actually go in and use those notes for my editing. So I started with just going through the whole thing so that I wouldn't get bogged down doing micro edits just in the first section. That way I could look at the whole thing and kind of get an overall sense of what changes needs to be made without getting stuck. And then once I did that, I went chapter by chapter so that I wouldn't get overwhelmed trying to edit the entire thing, because as a novel it's a huge undertaking and I've never done this before, so I had to kind of break it into sections so that I wouldn't get overwhelmed. So after going through the chapters, making the edits, I realized going through that my pacing was off. That my story essentially had 3 sections. We've got the intro, then the section with all the meet cutes where they're trying to get the couple together, and then the last section that really focuses on their relationship. And I realized that the intro took up about half the book. We didn't get to talk, even thinking about the meet cutes until halfway through the book. And I was like, nope, that's not gonna work. This needs to this needs to start earlier in the story because it's too much intro. The pacing needs to be fixed. So to fix that, I went into this program website that I use called Trello. I basically used it like making note cards, and I went through and just wrote down every single scene, and then I made myself 3 different columns for each of the sections: the intro, the meet cutes, and the relationship. So then I took each scene and put them in the sections how they fit, and I realized that I had a lot of flashback scenes in the intro section, and so I kind of moved those around throughout the story to kind of make the pacing better so that we could get to the meet cutes earlier in the story and it wasn't getting interrupted by all of the flashbacks. So then once I had all the note cards for the scenes set up, I went back into the manuscript and actually moved around the scenes that I had moved around in my note card organization. It ended up moving the introduction to the meet cute section to about a third way through. I was able to fix the pacing, and it actually worked within the story that the pacing got better by moving the scenes around like that. So it worked out really well. Then once I did that, I realized that the ending was it didn't have a good resolution. It just sort of petered out, and I didn't know how to end it well. So I realized that in the section with the relationship, I had sort of split it into, there was the conflict that started that section, then there was a declaration with fallout, then a resolution, and then them working on the relationship. And that's why it kind of there wasn't a good spot to be okay, now here's the ending of my story, because they were it was and then they keep working on the relationship. There wasn't any good resolution of, and here's where you end the story. So I realized, because I wanted to do that, I wanted to be okay, and they're in a relationship, but they're working on it, to kind of combat that, the stereotypical, and they lived happily ever after. That always feels misleading to me. It's no, if you're in a relationship, you're working on it. So I kind of wanted to show that in my story, because part of what I'm doing with it is kind of poking fun at all the rom-com tropes and and it just works out. It's no, this is how real life works, and I kind of wanted to include those bits in the story to kind of yes, all the rom-com tropes are fun, but you have to actually know all the work going on behind there too, to make it more realistic. The problem with then having them and they work on their relationship, just it made it bad storytelling because there wasn't a good, and here's where we end the story. So I decided that the resolution needed to be at the end. So I moved the scenes of them working on the relationship to between the declaration and the resolution so that it flowed better, and there was a defined, okay, here's where we stop telling the story. Because obviously they're going to keep going on as characters, they have the rest of their lives, but as the story, you need a succinct spot of okay, now we can walk away from this story, it's resolved, we're good, we got all the information we need. So that was interesting to look at, because I was like, okay, this is realistic, but is it good storytelling? So like I had to move it around to make it better storytelling for what I wanted, and so that it had a good ending, just like, and then they lived their lives. Like it just wasn't working for me. So I moved things around, and then I had to rewrite the ending because the way it now was working out needed a new ending to make it make sense. I moved scenes around and rewrote the ending to make it work and give a good resolution. So this whole process really worked out for me, and I really liked having all the scenes written out so that I could kind of look at it as a big picture, because since I've never written a novel, and novels are just such a big beast, it's hard to kind of look at it as a full entity sometimes, because it's just so huge. Like I'm used to short stories, and you've got 5 pages. You can read that in a few minutes. A novel takes hours. It was too much for my brain to hold on to as one thing. So having each scene and the sections and just kind of breaking it down a little bit helped me to like visually see it as a full picture by having the different sections. So that was a good way for me to approach it, and it started to click once I started doing that, which was really nice, because again, like I'm excited to be writing a novel, but I've never done it, so I'm just kind of flailing, figuring it out. So I was glad to find that that worked for me in the face of such a big project to tackle. It worked out really well, and I'm happy I kind of took that approach. So now that I've done my initial edits, went through, did all the moving around, and I have it basically all the scenes in the order that I want them. Everything's in there. There's no extra scenes that I don't like. I'm gonna go back through for my second edits and focus on word choice and sort of the voice in it. Now, my story's written in third person, but I am sort of like, the scenes are focusing on each character a little bit, so I want to use different words when talking about each of the characters, because then it kind of gives it its own voice for Brighton or for Nate, and it kind of tells you whose perspective we're kind of focusing on. Now I'm going back to the beginning and going through and making word choice decisions and saying like, okay, so I'm telling the story, but are these the best words in which to tell the story? Because word choice is very important because it's very specific. It gives different words, give you different feelings. So I'm going through and changing phrases and just the way I'm saying what's happening in the story, because I've got all the events in the right order. Now I want to be more picky about the words I use to describe those scenes. I'll go back through the whole manuscript and do a word choice edit. There might be a few rounds of that to make sure it all works out how I want it. Because when I went in, there were some scenes actually that I wrote in like present tense, and most of it's in past tense. So like, because I was like, oh, maybe I'll change it and make it all in present, and I don't really like that, so I have to go through some and like change tenses and things. And then for the final edits, I'll go in and do a grammar edit just to make sure everything's spelled correctly. So let me know how you handle pacing and scenes, and I'll be back once I'm through more of my edits to tell you how it's been going. Until then, have a great day.